effort. And it was time that you committed to the Barbados Labour Party and to making Barbados a better place. That you duly elected Mayor Mottley to be Prime Minister of Barbados and to lead the recovery of what we would have known as a doomed nation. While she walks here, I can say that my second job was in a place called Jamaica. I ran Shaka Cove and Irie FM in those days, and Tropic Battery for probably the richest Caribbean man, Danny Melvin. And I can tell you the hardship it was. Winnie would know. Hardship that we had in Jamaica. I was also the consultant for Super Plus supermarkets, 18 supermarkets across the island. And I could tell you that if we had 5 products on those shelves, we had a lot. Barbados was heading there. And therefore, we are happy to have leadership such as Mayor Mottley to stop the devaluation, further devaluation, to drive this economy in a way. Right. I think it is no better time, and you would have seen our candidate, our representative, here with me this afternoon. And he's not an opening batsman. He's a batsman that you got to go and prepare the wicket, get the bowlers tired. And I'm going to give Ralph Thorne the time to talk while the mayor gathers herself and to introduce himself to you. Welcome, Ralph. Thank you. Christchurch South.
Thank you. I should probably hold it. Is that better? Yes. Thank you, President Chase. Thank you very much. Thank you, President Chase, and congratulations to all those persons who were elected. I was here only for the first two or three, but I think you got elected. Yes, congratulations. And I missed the second portion because the Prime Minister is here, and she will be in shortly. And I want to bring the secret out that I told her, look, the good people of Christchurch South have been joined by the good people of Barbados to come and hear you. And I would therefore defer on what I have to say, because I'm not going to say anything that the good people of Christchurch South have not heard me say before, except to say thank you. We fought a lovely election thanks to Christchurch South. Thanks to the branch of Christchurch South, when we started on this journey. And by the way, welcome to all persons who are not from Christchurch South. You came here this evening and you saw how we conduct business. President, was it orderly? President, was it orderly? Good. I want to say thanks to the branch. This is something of a report. Permit me to call one name at least. Mr. Chase, Peter said that when this journey started, I first started walking this constituency. I'm not going to call a lot of names, but this young man here in the bush jacket, shirt jack suit, Noel Smith. Noel Smith, you are a wonderful human being. he just took me and we started walking. He says, no, I'm going to take you to the members first. But of course that had some problems because when we went to members, there were a few people next door and we walked past them and Noel would say, but Ralph, we can't walk past those people. So a campaign among that was intended to be among the membership became a general campaign. This gentleman was the first person who took me and walked with me through this constituency. Was he elected for anything this evening? You're not? Oh, congratulations, Noel. And I'm going to make a few confessions here this evening, because there are people here who will be candidates and members of parliament in the fullness of time. And one of the difficulties is sometimes convincing a branch to transfigure itself or to become a campaign committee. That is a difficulty you have sometimes, and this is not to criticize the branch executive, but this is just to disclose to our visitors this evening how we manage the process of having a branch begin the campaign. And while that campaign got going, we met new people. And those new people were not members of the branch. Some of them were not previously interested in politics, but some of them saw what we were doing, they liked what we were doing, and they wanted to be a part of it. And we wanted to be a part of their lives as well. And I met with the branch and told the branch, look, we're now going into election mode. Let us cease to be a branch as such, running the campaign, and let us become a campaign committee. I know people are very sensitive on these things, are very protective of office. But I want to say to you visitors that we had a smooth transition from the branch running the political campaign. We had a smooth transition into a campaign committee, which comprised persons who were not previously members of the branch. And I want to therefore commend the branch executive of the time and to thank those new persons. I've met some really, really good people. Sometimes it felt like a church. It didn't feel like politics. And I want to say to you, politics is not always pleasant. But we in Christchurch South have had a good time because we've been good people. I've met some really, really good people. And I'm going to ask their permission to call some names this evening. I really should not do it. But Adrian Donovan is one of the... Where is Adrian? If I talk about Adrian, I would start shedding tears. And Adrian, look, I told Mr. Duguid, you can borrow Adrian for a little bit. He didn't come, and I was glad. Adrian, what can I say about you? This man doesn't ask for anything except a Barbados Labour Party success. Nothing except that. And in the aftermath of the election, this gentleman is up and down this constituency trying to find jobs for people. And finding jobs for people. That gentleman there called Adrian Donovan. Those of you who are from other constituencies, please leave him alone. He is no longer on loan. He belongs to Christchurch South, and we are keeping Adrian Donovan. Adrian, I cannot contemplate a Christchurch South without you. I really cannot, and I want to thank you from the depths of my heart. I say this before and I'm going to say it again. I probably should not do it, but I should. I probably should not do it. You really shouldn't call names. You really should not call names, but I cannot leave this occasion unless I also say that we ran a campaign and we had visitors coming in every day at the campaign office. Well, we couldn't find out why. People from St. Lucie, from St. Joseph, Adrian from St. Peter. And we discovered that these were subcommittees that were set up at the party headquarters But they wanted to meet Medic too. He came. And we discovered that the party leaders set up these committees, but these committees wanted to meet at Christchurch South. And that's not all. These committees wanted to meet at 1 o'clock during the day. And we couldn't understand why. And we then discovered we were serving food at 1 o'clock. But we were not only serving food at 1 o'clock, we had the best cook in Barbados. I said on a political platform that I love Linda Harris. I don't know if they're recording it. Her husband is John Harris. He's John Harris. So please tell him it is agape love that I have for you. Linda, please stand up. Thank you very much. Linda is the person, apart from Adrian, who really molded us into the group that we've become. This gentleman called Michael, he came and joined this campaign, and every night when he was leaving, he would say, I am calling this place Love and Unity. Well, I don't know what his experiences were. I can speak for the unity. I don't know what love he found. He's a married man, and he's still married, but he came and found love, he says. Michael, I want to thank you as well. Michael is from Fairholme, Moravian Gardens. Before we started this campaign, you were involved in politics, Michael? I don't think so.
I wasn't too much involved.
He wasn't too much involved.
But I had to come with you.
Well, don't talk about that too much. I've put myself in a difficult situation because I've started to call names. And let us call some names. This gentleman here, he's shocked that I'm going to call his name. He's very shy. He's with his dear wife this evening. Christchurch South is not Christchurch South unless the name Ben Martinez. Indeed, Christchurch is not Christchurch. The Barbados Labour Party, Christchurch is not Barbados Labour Party, Christchurch, unless you hear and know and understand and feel the presence of this gentleman called Ben Martinez. A man who is extremely humble, doesn't raise his voice, but a depth of conviction and commitment to this great party. Asks for nothing. He asks for nothing except for Barbados Labour Party victory, Barbados Labour Party success. I've known him from school days. I don't know if he's going to allow me to call his nickname Fuzzy. That is how I first knew him, Fuzzy. Fuzzy running across the football field with his long mane. You knew him then, Jackie? Yes. This handsome, young, dashing fellow with this long black hair down the back. I think he used to get into trouble with the headmaster for not cutting it. That's correct, right, Ben? Occasionally. But Ben, let us welcome the Prime Minister of Barbados. The Prime Minister came and whispered an instruction in my ear. But the Prime Minister will give me time to call the name Hashim Dege as well. Again, I treated Hashim, Prime Minister, as our link to Sir Harold Bernard St. John. And you know, we in this constituency do nothing unless we acknowledge the contribution of Sir Harold, not only to Christchurch South, not only to Barbados, but Sir Harold was one of the most committed regionalists in the Caribbean. and he made an outstanding contribution to the Caribbean. And there are persons who sat in the ACP, African Caribbean Pacific Conferences, and they still call the name Harold St. John. And I treat Hashim as that link. Hashim and Ben, and Adrian, and Peter, as those links to the man who we consider the spiritual force in Christ Church South. And Hashim, I want to extend personal thanks to you. And met so many lovely people. And I'm speaking honestly, Ann Stee and Tim Slinger. Slinger has covered elections all across the Caribbean. And I wonder if he will allow me to say this. During the campaign, he used to tell us, you know, I never put on a red shirt yet. I was a journalist. Well, Tim, I want to thank you for allowing us to convert you. In 1993, I lost a big brother to death. And that big brother was in Tim's class at Harrison College. And Tim, I want to say to you, that day when you and I walked into the nomination center, I felt as if you were my big brother. I really felt so. And I cannot repay you, and this branch cannot repay you. You're not a resident of Christ Church South, but we cannot repay you for the work that you did over that stretch of the campaign. Thanks very, very much from the bottom of our hearts. Ali Kofdiwala. Where's Ali? He doesn't sit. Prime Minister, I met this gentleman the evening you and I went canvassing when I was first nominated. Yes. And this little white van pulled up. I want to see you. And I said, what this man with a beard wants to see me about? And we spoke later. I got to work with you. Man, all I would say about him, Prime Minister, is that a few Saturdays ago he called me. He want to go and canvass. Withdrawal symptoms the man was suffering. Because he and I walked every Saturday for 18 months, right, Ali? Every Saturday at 12 o'clock. My phone ringing, Ali on the other line. Ralph, what time are we going out? 2:30 as usual? And so the election came, it went under the great leadership of this lady. "30 love." But Prime Minister, I want to tell you that the seat that we gave to you is in large measure to that man with that white beard. That is why you introduced me. So he's now suffering withdrawal symptoms. Please stop calling me on Saturdays. 2 Saturdays ago, yeah, he called. He wants to go canvassing. I said, but Ali, the thing is over. Y'all laughing, but that is the measure. That is character. That is commitment. This man understands that there's a cause that goes beyond the election. And that is what I want to come here this evening, Prime Minister, in the next 2 minutes you're giving me, and say to the branch of Christ Church South that we fought an election. And under good leadership, we won an election. But the journey has not ended. We have to continue doing the things that brought us together. There are people here who we met as a result of the community work that we were doing. And we want to continue that work. Of course, I've credited Adrian with finding jobs for people. That is a part of it. Because politics must relate itself to people's material reality. And people want jobs. They need jobs. And we want to commit ourselves to that cause, to improve people's lives in Christ Church South. That will be our contribution. But beyond finding jobs for people and improving people's material circumstances, I want this constituency and I want this community to continue to be an example to the rest of Barbados as to what genuine community life should be. And I say this in the presence of the Prime Minister, that one of the biggest problems we have in Barbados is violence. That is one of the biggest problems. The jobs will come, the jobs will go, economic circumstances will improve, we will have a little austerity from time to time, but we cannot live in good times nor bad times economically if we have violence afflicting our lives. And this country has too much violence in it at this point in time. There's too much violence. And Prime Minister, we want to be an example. We want to do the kind of community work in this constituency that will be an example to the rest of Barbados. That when people work together, when people come together in wholesome political and social activity, that violence ceases to exist. That we must give young people hope. We must say to young people that a political party is relevant to social life in Barbados. The last 10 years gave political parties a very bad name. We have never had such obvious corruption in government. And if young people were seeing a corrupt government, what do they do about their own lives? What is their self-image? How do they relate to a political system that is itself corrupt? And therefore, we must transfigure the image of politics in Barbados. We must make politics decent. And we must bring communities together so that people who think violence will think twice about violence. And I want to report to you, Prime Minister, that this constituency has not been afflicted by violence as much as other constituencies have been. And to the branch I say, let us keep it that way. Let us continue our community work. It is not always about money, it is not always about living in the best material circumstances, but it is about living together. And I say this in the presence of the Minister of Community Affairs, Mr. Ford. Minister Ford has been a part of our campaign. We know this. Every community event we did, Minister Ford was there. So it's no accident that he's here this evening. And we regard his presence with great appreciation. We're neighbors, in more ways than one. We are neighbors, we are friends. The window that I have to his house is always closed, though. I've called a lot of names. There are other names I could call and would call, but we have a Prime Minister here this evening. I met this lady in 1985. Prime Minister, you were called to the bar in 85. She probably forgot that one day we did a rape case together. 87. Her client got locked up. My client got locked up too. Today, we have locked arms together for the good of this country. I am so proud. I am so proud. Look, we had a meeting in Providence, and I uttered a few words that night, Prime Minister. I said, I am the son of a mother. I am the brother of two sisters. I said it in Providence as well. I'm the husband of a wife. I'm the father of a daughter. And that the significant presences in my life were female. And it was at a time, and it had been at a time in this country, when a lot of people, including women, had a problem with female leadership. The other half of humanity that is created by God to live in harmony with men, and on occasions to provide leadership to men. But Prime Minister, I don't want to go into a long speech this evening. I have come to praise you. Not because you're the first female Prime Minister of Barbados, but because you will be a good Prime Minister of Barbados. You all saw in 4 months what this lady has done? 4 months. I want to present to you a lady that you know, a lady who has made such deep personal sacrifice in her own life, and now she has become mother of a country. She used to be mother of St. Michael Northeast. She used to be mother of the Barbados Labour Party. Tonight she's the mother of this country. And her children love and will support her for the duration of the term in which she will have the honor to lead this country. Not lead it like a woman, but lead it like a good Prime Minister who also is a woman. Prime Minister, tonight, it is my honor to speak to my branch for the first time as Member of Parliament. And it is a double honor to be able to introduce you to my branch, to my people, to my parish, to my Barbados Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Ralph. You know, good evening to each and every one of you. It is impossible for me to be in this hall at St. Christopher's with Ralph Thorne and to forget that on the night that I celebrated my 50th birthday, I celebrated it in this hall for the nomination of this man who was to become this Member of Parliament. And I would like to believe, therefore, that on that night we gave birth to a good relationship between the people of Christchurch South and a man who is equal to the task and equal to the legacy of Sir Harold Bernard St. John. And I don't say that lightly, because anybody who understood Sir Harold would understand that he felt passionately about the governance of this country, about the governance of how we relate to one another and the ability for ordinary people to participate. He wasn't in Oystons every weekend by accident. He was there because he wanted to have the input of ordinary people, and he understood that ordinary people had a view that had to be represented at all levels of government. It is for that reason that Billy Miller continues, Dame Billy continues to refer to Sir Harold as first and foremost and everlasting the legal advisor to the Southern District Council. Because for those who are young, the Southern District Council was part of the local government architecture of Barbados. And that is where Sir Harold started his representational politics, not at the top, but at the level of the community, at the level of local government and local governance. And many of you may recall that sometime this same gentleman delivered the Sir Harold Bernard Memorial Lecture. And in delivering it, set out a clear treatise on local government and deepening participatory democracy. Anybody who says that this person does not listen to people, tell them it ain't true. Because on that night, I determined that this gentleman, once given the opportunity to be a member of parliament, would lead for the benefit of Barbados in the 21st century. A commission that would come to update how we govern ourselves such that we could have in real terms again your participation beyond voting every 5 years in this country. Bajans want to be more involved. And I want to say to you that I have offered, and Ralph has accepted, that he should be the chair of the Commission on the local governance, not government, governance of this country, and how we seek to deepen that level of participation by ordinary people, because we do not have short memories. As much as I would like to think that you like how I look and Ralph how look, we didn't get here by our looks. We got here because we laid out a program, and a program that was built on a people's movement. Because what we saw in May of this year was not just an election of 30 MPs. It was a movement of the people of Barbados to reclaim their destiny. And if we read that properly, it means that we have a duty to now allow the people in this movement to participate at a different level. It is for that reason that as far as possible I try to communicate to you what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, across all activities. So we stream, because you need to know, as I kept saying before, how we will act in your name. We don't act in our own names. We act in the names of the people of this country, pursuant to a mandate given to us by the people of this country. And we will never forget it. We will never forget it. But that in and of itself is only one part of it. The other part must always be to allow the consultation to take place. And I promised you that we would have a series of consultations on issues that are difficult and issues that reflect where we want to go as a people. And I expect that in the next few months, the first such consultation will take place. And the Electoral and Boundaries Commission will not just work once every 5 years or if there is a by-election, but they will work to help us capture your opinion on key fundamental issues. And ultimately, when Ralph's commission is finished going around the country and elsewhere, just as we had the Ford Commission on Constitutional Reform, which will be used and will be the basis for our review of the Constitution, we will have the Thorne Commission on Governance. And Ralph, I trust and pray that this exercise will allow you to be able to put in practical terms, yourself and David Comijong as your deputy, in practical terms, ideas that both of you have been putting forth to this country for a few years now, such that the people of Barbados can reflect on them, decide if they like them, they don't like them, they want them, they don't want them. But that is how we must govern going forward. And I thank you for agreeing to lead that effort, because it will be historic. It is true that local government was abolished in 1967. And I'm told that there was a famous statement that if you can't move Mottley from the city, you will move the city from Mottley. how fortuitous that it is I who get no to be able to allow the people to determine whether they want local governance or not. But suffice it to say, and I want to allay all concerns up front, we are not talking about local government with another layer of taxation. All we are talking about is being able to deepen the consultation, increase your involvement, because it is our considered opinion, things like whether roads are done in communities or street lights or all other kinds of things that ought to be the subject of consultation and not just one man or a centralized statutory board doing as they like without reference to the community. These things are not good enough. They're not good enough. And even Sports Council and others, Oki, the level of consultation and interaction with communities has to change. And I move from that to the very most important point, and Ralph is correct, that we will not go anywhere if we do not get on top of violence in our country. Violence in the homes, violence in the communities, violence wherever it is found. And if you go back from when I was Minister of Education, there is a consistency in all that I've said from then through the Attorney General, through being responsible for security for 10 countries in Cricket World Cup, through being responsible for the establishment of the preparatory committee to establish the Caribbean Court of Justice, to where I stand now. Even as Minister of Economic Affairs, one, people will not get involved in ignorance for the most part if they have something to lose. What is it that they need? Their reputation and sense of identity is the first thing that people need. If people have a sense of shame, a sense that I don't want to embarrass myself or my mother or my father or my spouse or my children, that's the first thing that constrains behavior. Not true? The second thing that constrains behavior is the ability to articulate how you feel. Because if I can't tell you how you feel, welcome Minister Moore, you can just leave the things there to me. If I can't tell you how I feel, more often than not, I am likely to lash out. And that's what happens. So that people's ability to articulate how they feel is critical. And that means, therefore, that education and language is absolutely critical in our schools. I've been saying so since the mid-1990s. And the ability for us to allow people the ease of access to language. And when we lost Radiofusion, we lost a powerful tool, because a lot of people learned language through that Radiofusion in their households. Not true? A lot of people. And when we moved to community broadcasting, we felt that community broadcasting meant you should only speak in dialect. But if you only speak in dialect, this little boy is only ever going to hear dialect on the radio. So you have to be able to speak in English. If not, when we send him from these shores, we are sending him like a double amputee, incapable of articulating how he feels or what he wants or what he can do. And the first person to speak Bajan is me. I speak Bajan. I love speaking Bajan. But I also understand the need when I have to speak English to communicate on your behalf or on my behalf. And we must have that aspiration, not just for Bajan and English, but for Spanish or Mandarin or French. Remember what I said? That by 2030, that all children under the age of 18 should at least be bilingual. And I didn't mean Bajan and English, but that's important too. I meant English and Spanish, or English and French, or English and Mandarin. And we are working actively towards that. When I met the president of Cuba 2 weeks ago, we've agreed that this is a priority for us. Why? When the Cuban government offers us scholarships, this your little boy wants to decide he wants to go and do medicine in Cuba or some other thing in Cuba, he can go immediately and do it without having to spend a year learning the Spanish if he has learned it all through school here. And when he finishes, many of you remember Vivian? You can't know me if you didn't know Vivian. Vivian had a niece who went to Cuba and who studied medicine. Not too bad? Hey, God forgive me. Vivian's niece could not come back here initially to practice medicine because of the confusion which we need to resolve once and for all for those who went and studied in Cuba. She met a Mexican in Cuba. She married a Mexican, and she's living, having worked in Clarendon in Jamaica with him in the polyclinics down there. She's living in Mexico now, speaking Spanish all day, every day, married to a Mexican. Bajan, couldn't speak Spanish fluently before she went to Cuba, learned it down there, and her whole life has changed, and that of her children and everyone else. Imagine when you have that language, it means that jobs are open from Chile, right down in the bottom, Argentina, Ecuador, Peru. They tell me that I have a great-grandfather who was a Collins Guyanese man from Speightstown, lived in Speightstown. He had, when he finished having the family here with my grandmother and them, that he went to Ecuador, and that I have family in Ecuador who I've never met yet. Just a laughing because she know. But the point I'm making is that that's how people moved in this hemisphere. And if we don't give them language, they lose it. But regrettably, language is also important in our own communities. And if people can't express, man, why you take up my stuff? You shouldn't have troubled me. A man instead would take, years ago, a 2x3 or a rock stone. Regrettably, today, the weapon has changed. And while you could recover from a 2x3 or a rock stone, perhaps easier, or even a knife, the ability to recover from an automatic gun, shooting enough bullets at one time, is much slimmer. And therefore, the ability for that person to say, "I'm sorry, my head was hot," means nothing now. 30 years ago, "I'm sorry, my head was hot, Ralph." The fellow survived. The other fellow might have faced wounding, serious wounding, grievous bodily harm, still living. Not today. So that we don't have a buffer anymore. And to that extent, therefore, we need to get on top of anger management, language communication, sense of identity and sense of pride in who you are, and not wanting to get in things that will either deprive you of liberty, life, or reputation. So I'm on board with you fully with that. And I say so conscious that in this week we have had way too many shootings, and I'm not going to rest until we get Barbadians to understand that there are three things that frighten me. And I don't have any shame in saying so, and I will work hard to protect us against all three as the person in charge of the country at this point in time. Hurricanes, earthquakes, and automatic guns. And I'm not frightened to ask for help on any of those three. And we are going to prepare to fight them, because Barbados is too good a place, too sweet a place for it to be invaded by any of those things. That we don't have the ability to stop a hurricane, but we have the ability to prepare for a hurricane. We don't have the ability to even prepare that easily for an earthquake, and we now learn that we're in the zone. But we have the ability to build and to mitigate against the consequences of an earthquake. and we have the ability to train our young people, talk with our young people, talk with our older people, those who believe that guns are tools of trade, to understand that not both here. Not both here. And there's nobody who spends more time liming with young people and talking to young people than I do. And you saw it in the last campaign. But equally, I also say to them, straight talk. Straight talk, don't bring that wrong here next to me. Because you and I gonna fall out if I see you with guns. Straight talk. And the day that I learned straight talk was possible was the day when the same youngsters, a year ago, said to me, mistress, don't worry about out here, don't worry about them fellas in government, them gone. I said, how do you mean them gone? They said, the order is set. I said, how do you mean the order is set? They said, well, everybody out here understand that the order is set. That nobody don't want them. But the language used, they didn't want them. But you didn't know how true they were talking. But the language used said to me that our people understand the need for leadership and understand the need for firm leadership. And that's all that we want. We good. Firm leadership must become passionate. Firm leadership must care. But firm leadership must understand boundaries. And we have boundaries in this society when it comes to violence and guns. And we need all of us, all 280,000, how much ever there is of us, have to get on board to fight down violence in this country, to reduce violence, to remove violence. But firm leadership means taking decisions. And from the beginning of our government, I said to you at Wharton, in the parish of Christchurch again, that I could not rule out that we would not have to go to the IMF. That night, I carried you on a journey and showed you how Frondell Stewart had literally carried us on a plane to Washington, D.C., put us in a taxi and carried us from the airport down to the IMF headquarters, you remember? And that he did, he opened the door, put us in the elevator, going straight upstairs, and when he get in front of Madame Lagarde's office, sit down and say, I ain't ready yet. Because he didn't know how to make the last step. But he knew that our reserves had been reduced to just over 200 million US, $400 million. And he knew that we were about to enter a period of time when oil prices had started to rise in the world again. And that if oil prices were rising, it means that your reserves would take a hit because you'd have to spend more foreign currency to buy that which you were buying. In fact, the truth is, had oil prices not gone down 3 years ago, Frondell's government would have been in trouble 3 years ago. They were saved. And I remember in the opposition office making the point in press conferences, they were saved by favorable terms of trade. In other words, the price of oil dropped and interest rates dropped at the same time. And that's what bought them 2.5, 3 years. Now we live in a world where both oil prices started to go back up 6 months a year ago, and interest rates started to go back up 6 months a year ago. That is our lot. But we understand that it was not going to intimidate us. And within 1 week of becoming the government, we told you and the rest of the world that we were going into an IMF program and that we would also be suspending our debt payments because in truth and in fact, Barbados had become insolvent. No different from a company that ain't got enough to pay the liabilities that it got to pay. Like Clico, yes. And nothing gave me greater hurt, pause, that this is where Barbados had been reduced to. Nothing. But I knew that in order to survive and for us to thrive, that a decision had to be made. And that we could sit back, and I reflect on it now, the meetings in the conference room at government headquarters, because some wanted to suspend only local government, local debt, and some foreign, and people back and forth and back and forth. You have to be able to make decisions. And that's what Frondel couldn't do. Could not make decisions. And Barbados paid a dear price for a prime minister that could not make decisions. Now, every decision will not always be correct or fully correct or 100%. But what you can't do is to keep yourselves paralyzed in fear. And I am happy that less than 4 months after that decision, I can stand before you tonight to tell you that the IMF program at least has been completed, that we were able to get them to accept a program that we crafted, that it was a program that we designed after consultation. I now have to confess that the consultation was not only now. For 2 years before the election, we were doing what? Rubbing shoulders. And each time we rubbed shoulders, we were making notes. And each time we had consultations, Pat would tell you we were making notes. And we were therefore in a position, as I kept telling you, to govern from day one. We didn't have to come to government to find our way to govern, because we knew that the country did not have the buffer. That if we dilly-dallied and went deeper into June, July, or even if we had paid our debt, foreign debt in June, that we would be in trouble. And these things hurt, but we can't wallow in the hurt. We have to govern and to make decisions. And I want publicly tonight to thank the Social Partnership of Barbados. Because from the very first morning after these ministers were sworn in at Bay Street, the very first meeting of my government was with the Social Partnership of Barbados. All of the union leaders, all of the leaders of the private sector organizations. And we started with one question after the pleasantries. Do we all agree in here that the Barbados dollar must be saved at all costs? And we went around the room one by one, by one, by one, by one, by one. And every single person said, yes, we must not devalue our dollar. We must save the Barbados dollar at all costs. Because they all understood that if you ever devalued, that our ability to be able to manage changes in prices and the capacity of our population to live gone through. From the buying of oil and gas, fuel, payment of electricity, the purchase of food. When I first went to Jamaica as a student, not a student, as a young lawyer, never forget it because it was the year of Gilbert, the weekend of Gilbert. Never forget it. But the dollar was 8 to 1. 8 Jamaican dollars to 1 US 30 years ago. Go on your phone now and look at the exchange rate for the Jamaican dollar to the US dollar. Yeah, 125. It went up as high as 130 something to 1 US dollar. So that when I tell you that we would move heaven and earth to do whatever we've had to do to save you from that uncertainty. And why? Jamaica is large. Others in here will tell you, Ralph will tell you that Jamaica can feed themselves. So that even if a man can't find the money, or a woman can't find the money to buy tins of corned beef and sardines and mackerel They could go in Black River and pick up crayfish. Go in Black River and pick up crayfish. They can walk the street and pick the ackee. They can feed themselves in a way that Barbados with 166 square miles cannot do. So that we understood on that day that the social compact meant that there would have to be adjustments to expenditure and adjustments to revenue. But I was adamant from the time that I picked up the phone to speak to Madame Lagarde that whatever we do, we needed to put some wrong things right first. And putting those wrong things right don't mean that you didn't have to face a bad and a difficult tomorrow. We knew that. We knew that we didn't have the reserves. We knew that we couldn't service our debt properly going down the line, and there wouldn't be anything left for us to do anything with government. How do you have a government with a Ministry of Public Works with 800, 900 workers, and every day, Leo, sitting down under a tree because you don't have a piece of equipment working for the Ministry of Public Works workers for the last 2-3 years to do anything in your community or across the country? How many of you know that? For 3 years. Because all they had was money literally just to pay the salary. Now, nothing wrong with that if you were going to get out of that situation. But instead of getting out of that situation, you were getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the hole. And I kept saying that you could get out of a 20-foot hole on your own by being creative and ingenious and flexible and take your shirt and tear it up and wrap up and send it up. You could do things. But when the hole started to become a 40 and 50-foot hole, you cannot get out without somebody else helping you. And that's what we had reached to by last year. Praise Church again. December 2016 at Top Rock. You remember the meeting? When I came to talk about sewage, and I told you at the end of it that Delisle World had started discussions with the IMF. You remember? And then they tried to deny it, and by the next month they fired World because World effectively told them they needed to go to the IMF. And instead of going to the IMF, they held on to government for another 18 months. 18 months. Now, how does the Barbados Labour Party government come into office, approach the fund 1 week after you voted on the 31st of May, and by the 1st of October, Ralph, it's not the program that we want, because the program is ours. But it's the money that the program unlocks, their approval. Where we get a bill of health that says this country, if it does these things, has a good prognosis. And therefore, on Wednesday morning, when I looked at our reserves, the graph having been going like that, all of a sudden the graph do so and shoot up. A sight that I know most men like to see. I am happy that the truth is that our reserves, therefore, I don't like to talk about anything from when I told you that it shot up like that and made a joke about the men, you understand I'm not lying. Ralph? And Ralph says he's used to it. And I must tell you that the line is in red too. But the bottom line is that our gross international reserves now, and look at the line, because that's where we were in May when we took over. We luckily, even before the IMF sent the money, we started to see an improvement in our reserves in the last few months. And the truth is that our gross international reserves as of the 3rd of October is $673 million. Now, the truth is that the journey now starts. And we made the point that the benefit of the IMF is not what they will lend us, which is going to be $290 million US dollars at less than 2%, cheapest money around. It's not that. We'll get that 290, almost 600 million Barbados dollars we'll get from them over a 4-year period. This first 100 million came in this week. But what the IMF really does is that it unlocks other access to capital. Sanford knew it. That's why you heard others before the election saying you have to make decisions, including Mr. Arthur, because they know that it is almost, you get an independent bill of health. An independent bill of health. So no matter how much Frondel and Chris Sinclair say, we good, we good, we good. Nobody didn't believe them. And with all due respect, even if I came to say that we good, I knew that our word was not enough. You needed an independent bill of health, Noel. We've gotten that. Now, what does that also mean, therefore? It also means that we are going to, it also means that we are going to access funds from the Inter-American Development Bank. Very shortly, we expect to get another 200 million Barbados dollars from them. Similarly, we are hoping that we will access, probably in the short term, initially another 150 million from the CDB. Now, if I can get that 350 million by the end of the year, and certainly before the end of this financial year, it means that you would have had $450 million come in to help stabilize our effort. Because as we stabilize, we need now to be doing the hard, heavy lifting to restructure. It is no different from an operation. We were bleeding. You had to stop the bleeding first before you can operate. That's what we did when we said, look, I had the budget, a call for the IMF, a call for the debt suspension. Secondly, you then go to the operation. The other part, on the 1st of October, was the IMF agreeing to lend us the money based on the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Program, the BERT program. But on Friday, we also closed our debt exchange. And our debt exchange is not something that I wanted to do easily. Who wants to suspend debt? Bajans like to pride themselves on paying their debt. But you can only pay the debt if you have the capacity to pay. And that's why rules of insolvency and bankruptcy have been developed centuries ago, not true, Ralph? To be able to allow entities, companies, individuals, to be able to settle with those whom they owe and start fresh again. Happens with airlines all the time. Happens with companies all the time. Now, we didn't want it. But we didn't put ourselves in a situation where we owed way almost $15 billion. When the Barbados Labour Party left government in January 2008, the country's debt was about $6 billion. And you saw what you got for it When we inherited it in 94, it was just over 2. And you saw what we did with the money. Between 2008 and 2018, that pack of people there's a young boy in the audience. Carried the debt of this country to $15 billion almost from 6. An increase of almost $9 billion. And you have heard us say over and over that Barbados became the 3rd most indebted country in the world on a debt to GDP basis. Almost 171% by the time we put in not just the formal debt, but the arrears. And let me recap it quickly for you. Because NIS, when we left, was only holding $1.4 billion in government paper. When we came back 10 years later, it was holding $3.8 billion. More than double. And worse than that is what they wouldn't pay them for what they owed them still. And I'm going to come to that shortly. Central Bank held zero in government paper in the year 2008, Leo. Today, when we got the government in May 2018, Central Bank was holding almost $2 billion in government paper from zero. How did we get back here, Mr. Sandyford asked. So Lloyd asked, how did we get back here? I can tell you how we get back here a little before done tonight. But the incompetence was buttressed regrettably by corruption as well. So that when we have now to restructure debt, it hurts me. One, because we didn't want to go there. But how else would this little boy have a future in this country? How else would you see out the evening of your years in this country, Tony, Ricky? How else? With a Barbados that got a hospital that can't help you when you go to it because all the government money going to pay debt. So they can't buy medication. They can't fix up the hospital. When the children come to school for the last 2-3 years, the parents are who are helping and the teachers are who helping to supply materials in the school. You go to the police station, sometimes they don't even have the books to write in. You go to the licensing authority, same thing. We had reduced Barbados to next kin to nothing under the Democratic Labour Party. And it became totally evident in the metaphor of the sewage on the streets of the South Coast. That became the perfect picture metaphor of all that they did. And I am sorry that Wilfred is away on government business tonight, because believe you me, I want to publicly salute Wilfred Abrams for his leadership. We are not yet fully where we want to be, but we are getting there and almost there. And you for yourself have seen the difference. I don't need to tell you anything. But if all goes well, we can then start to refocus very shortly on the medium to long-term solutions and not just the short-term fixes that came to humbug everybody in this parish and humbug the entire tourism sector and humbug the country of Barbados, reducing us to 4 international advisories from the US, the UK, Canada, and Germany. Believe you me. So that when I say to you that the choice about suspension of debt was not an easy one, it wasn't. But by the same token, I know what my obligation is to you and what our government's obligation is to you in terms of the provision of services. You paying taxes. And you expect that the taxes that you pay were going to things that you are accustomed getting all through the years. Within the health system. Within the educational system. With the roads being fixed. Instead of that, how many people were buying shocks and new tires 2 and 3 times a year? That's what we were reduced to. So my friends, we launched the domestic debt exchange. Not easy. And I've come tonight to say to the pensioners of Barbados, I got your back. Hold tight. I got your back. And we will make sure that you can live. But we took a conscious decision, first and foremost, to exclude savings bonds. Because we understood that savings bonds, invariably, what the last government did, playing all kinds of calypso jingles on radio, to encourage you to buy bonds when they know that they should not have been encouraging you at that time, that it was junk bonds. All of the talk about credit downgrades don't mean nothing, you remember? And the credit downgrades took us to junk. And they knew that they were inviting you into trouble. And I want to be clear this evening on a number of things. I want to be clear. A mechanic that understands an engine knows immediately where in the engine to go and to remove the part that needs fixing and to fix it back. Not true? Don't go fumble about the whole engine. Put me in front of an engine, I don't know what you're doing. When you saw the banks, and we kept telling the country, when you saw the banks of the country, the 5 banks that we have in Barbados, stop buying long-term instruments, selling out government paper that was 5-year and 7-year government paper. From as far back as November 2013, on a consistent basis, you knew that the hurricane or the storm was coming. So that when the then governor and Sinclair and them put out these savings bonds, instead of going and getting the real help that we got in 4 months, they would have taken 40 months though. They then preyed upon you to get you to come in and put in your money. Now, you may ask yourself, why exclude savings bonds and not deal with pensioners with the other instruments? It is because the other instruments were not only held by pensioners, but by institutions and banks and financial insurance companies, credit unions, etc. Because the government would have issued a debenture or the government would issue a T-bill and all kinds of people would buy those instruments. And therefore you have to treat those instruments together. The measure of whether we were in trouble and how much the banks knew, because the banks are financially literate. That's their business. The banks were still making $1.5 billion in profits in the last 10 years in this country. 2007, the 5 banks, pre-tax profits, 172 million. 2008, 161 million. 2009, 177 million. 2010, 133 million. 2011, 108 million. 2012, 105 million. 2013, 88 million. 2014, 73 million. Even their profits went down in those years, but they still made a profit. 2015, 170 million. 2016, 202 million. 2017, 182 million. That is what the banks made at the very time that we call now the lost decade. The decade was lost to you and you and you and you and everybody in this room. The decade was lost to the public servants who did not get a salary increase since 2010. The decade was lost to people depending on the hospital or depending on the bus service or depending on education or depending on garbage collection. The decade was lost to all Bajans, but it was not lost to the banks or the insurance companies. And I could go through and give you the same figures for the insurance companies too. But the point is this. I am not here to get into blame at this point. I am here to say that we had a simple premise that we told you year after year after year. And we just simply lived it out once we became the government. That the burden has to be shared fairly by all. You cannot ask the workers of the country to be sent home alone and believe that the burden can be shared fairly, as happened in 91 alone. The burden has to be shared by labor, by capital, by government, by everybody. But I go further. Because of the structure, therefore, of the debt exchange, the lawyers advised me from early that you would not and you cannot do much to be able to deal with the pensioners prior to the close of the debt exchange. Well, the debt exchange closed Friday. It is now my turn to help the pensioners of Barbados. And Ralph, you as a lawyer know that if you ask for legal advice, it is a lawyer who is a fool that advises themselves first and foremost. And that secondly, we cannot be paying for legal advice and go counter to their advice. So you ever ask yourself why you didn't say nothing before today? Because of the debt exchange having to close. Now there's some issues with the banks that I hope will be resolved this week. But come hell or high water, and we don't have the final tally on it, a new debt instrument will be issued to all of you who asked to come on board and to have your country supported by your decision to accept that new debt instrument. We can't do it without you. I'm not fooling you. And I want to thank the thousands of Barbadians and those institutions who have recognized that their country is in trouble and that their country needed the support of you to exchange the old bond or treasury bill or treasury note and to accept the new one that we are giving you. We accept that especially for persons who are 75 or 80 or 85, that they can't live and see easily. That they can live, but they can't see easily that they're going to live another 15 years. And therefore, what we will do is to work over the next few weeks to see how those persons who are particularly in that position, that elderly age, who need cash in the short term, can be assisted, while those who don't need cash in the short term but are happy to get it in the medium term can hold the instruments. And our role as government is to try as much as possible to keep you whole. And why? All the long talk. Do you understand that in this debt exchange, you know that we have not cut a cent of your principal as individuals? That we're giving you interest rates that start at 1.5%, which is 10%, 10 times higher than what you're getting from the banks now tomorrow morning. All of the long talk, what we are offering in the debt exchange is a higher interest rate than any bank is paying any Barbadian in this country. The issue is that we have to stretch it out. It's a version of many hands make light work. Many years make light work. We had to stretch it out. Not because we're wicked or we want to do something to you, but because this is what we've inherited. And if we don't do it, you do it every day. You go to the bank and you say, my cash flow can't carry it anymore. Can you help ease the terms of the loan? And you end up carrying the loan for another 2 or 3 years so that you could continue to pay the loan because your cash flow can't manage anymore. Barbados' cash flow couldn't manage anymore. Not if I want to make sure that when you go to the hospital that you could get help. Or when you go on a bus, you have a bus to catch. Or when you want your garbage collected, you can get the garbage collected. And I am prepared for my government to be judged by these measurements the next time we come to you. Because the Barbados that you used to live in is the Barbados that you want to live in again, not the one that the Democratic Labour Party foisted on you. And I have come here this evening to start to talk, and I have said to the other MPs, talk to the people, because this has to be explained. And the people have to be told what we are doing, but also reminded how we got here. I didn't know that the Nation editorial would have written the same thing today. Because I can give the evidence. I don't lock up nobody. Others is lock up. My point is this. I've said from the beginning, it's not going to be easy, but we can do it. And I want to reverse a little bit and remind you the point that I made when we came to government. Because when I first spoke to Madame Lagarde at 7 o'clock that night on the 31st of May, I said to her that the country needs help. Yes, but there are some things that we have to fix. We are a government that has not even been in office 1 week. But I have public servants who had not received a pay increase for 8 years. That I had pensioners who were receiving a non-contributory pension. That the increase in the pension did not even come close to the level of inflation that they had to endure in the last decade. That I had a transport board that could not even put 65 buses on the road good when we inherited the government. Now they put in 106, and when we had the flood, it dropped down to 85 and it back up again. That I had a country that would start every day with 12 to 15 garbage trucks on average and end the day with 6 to 8. That I had a sewage system that triggered 4 international advisories in a country that depends on tourism receipts to pay its bills. And that whatever else we do, that Barbadians were prepared to do that which is necessary to save our dollar. Because remember, the social partnership gave me that mandate 3 days before. But that what we needed to do was to accept that you couldn't just put more hardship on the backs of people straight off. And that we needed to do some things, or in the language that I used, I needed to give people a little breakfast before the long journey. That once people eat a little breakfast, that they can make the journey. And study yourself. You might not eat well for 2 weeks, but the morning that you eat good, you feel you can walk a marathon, not true? You don't eat back for the 2 weeks one time to walk the marathon. Only gluttons is do that. Or people that want teeth. And she got the metaphor. She got it. That you have to give people a little breakfast to walk the long journey. And that is why at Wharton, Christchurch again, when they were questioning how I was going to deal with the pensioners, what did I tell you? Give me the vote and watch me. I tell you I like Beijing. Give me the vote and watch me. And what did we do? Every single non-contributory pensioner and the contributory ones at the bottom, from the middle of July, what did you all receive? Did you get what? Promise made? Promise kept. And if you haven't got yours, ma'am, as your one, see the others and we can make sure of it. But I know pensioners across the length and breadth of this country have gotten their increases in the non-contributory pensions when they told me that we couldn't do it. Secondly, I kept faith when they said that we would at least give the public servants what? An increase to do what? To allow them to at least stave off the worst that was going to still have to take years. And the 5% from August, you have been getting what? An increased salary in the public service. Not true? Yes. I asked you to give me the vote and watch me about your children at university. Children went where? Who had to pay at UE Community College and Erdiston and the Polytechnic? Not a fella. Promises made. I can't hear you. So that when I say to you, if I can do it, I'm going to do it. And the day I say to you, I can't make no. Know that I'm telling you the truth. So that when I say to the pensioners tonight, particularly the older pensioners, I would like to do all, but I might not be able to do all. I am fooling the body. But the ones over 75 in particular, the letters that have hurt my heart, people who are 90 years old, who put their money in government paper, and who, because of a wicked, worthless, corrupt, and incompetent government, this is a fact, have been put in this position. They hold paper that other institutions and entities hold. Therefore, I could not isolate you at that point in time. But the Constitution of Barbados, Ralph, at section 23, prohibits discrimination on a number of grounds. But the grounds don't include age. So if I say I want to help people 75 and over, I can help people 75 and over. Not true? And therefore, all I ask for is the next few weeks, because traditionally, people who bought bonds would not Stafford given the ID number and those kinds of things, or we wouldn't keep it in that format easily. So we're now going through the process of being able for me to see the numbers and to make the judgment as to what we can afford, and to make sure that those persons who are at the end of the days of their lives can live it out in dignity. The rest of us will still have to hold on and help me carry a little heavy weight. But I know this, that on the same 1st of June that we announced the debt restructuring, I got a call asking me to speak to Ross University. And within 2 months, we were able to lock off and we didn't go poaching anything. They came to us and said they were looking at us and 2 other countries. And we were able to persuade them that of the 3 countries that they were looking at, come to Barbados, and this is what we would do for you. life is instructive. Because I now know what it is to have a medical university come to you, want to apply, say to them that we will issue a charter to you, but only on condition that you can be registered and that you can be accredited by the regional accreditation body, which is known as CAMHP, which is located in Jamaica, and that we set up a subcommittee of cabinet. Not a one minister here and a one minister there and a one minister there to meet day or night. We set up a subcommittee of cabinet that included not just the ministers, but the public officers, the chief education officer, the chief medical officer, the director of finance, the PS. No, in that. It's one Barbados. And they reported back to cabinet. And within less than 2 months, June 1st, what day, the Friday before crop over, what day my fete was? August 3rd, August 4th. It was the Friday before Kadooment Day. I know that. Because I can admit one thing to you, it was the hardest press conference I ever did because the only morning fete I went to was that morning. It was the 3rd of August. And we held a press conference announcing that the equivalent of about 1,500 students, 100 faculty, and potentially another 100, 150 jobs locally will be generated from Ross University. And that obviously accommodation, transport, food and services. But study ahead. Those students living here for 9 months ought to generate 9, 10 months a year. I call them 9 or 10 month tourists because they're not staying here forever. But imagine, the average US tourist spends 4 days, the average UK tourist spends 10 days. So let's say the average tourist spends about 7 days. Those people are here for 9, 10 months, 10 months. 1,500 people, 1,600 people for 10 months is the equivalent of 1,600, let's deal by month. 1,600 tourists for a week. Multiply that by 4 for a month. That's 48, so that's 5,000 tourists a month. Multiply by 10. That's the equivalent of at least 50,000 more tourists coming to Barbados next year by having Ross University established here. And you, the people of Christchurch, more than anybody else, and Southern St. Michael are the prime beneficiaries because they're living in Christchurch and predominantly as a block. So that before the year even starts, we have lockdown from January. Additional people spending in this country and in this parish in particular that we're not spending this year. Now, this is a good thing because the growth of this economy is what is going to get us out of the hole. You keep us here saying, you hear Clyde say all the time that we must grow to get out. And in growing to get out, what are we doing? Making sure that the pot gets bigger and bigger and bigger so that ultimately the level and height and scale of taxes can eventually come down. Because Barbados has a lot of transactional taxes. So the bigger the pie, the less the rate has to be to get the kind of money that we need to get to run the country. But that's if you're doing it properly. And I can know the day that I can dead. Because on that afternoon of the 3rd of August, I said publicly then and gave instructions, without knowing what we would have to face in the last week, gave instructions that we need separate and special legislation to deal with universities, offshore universities, but in particular offshore medical universities. That you need to have certainty and transparency as to how you apply, what are the conditions under which universities are given a charter to operate, how they will be registered, what is the criteria used for registration, what is the criteria used for accreditation or who should accredit, how you continue to monitor standards, Ralph, and how ultimately what are the fiscal incentives and concessions that you will give to everybody. Not this one here and that one there and this one there. And that who are the entities that should be doing this. I know they did, I ain't dead. The Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health are working on that since August. Lo and behold, on no less a day than my birthday, I reading the release from the IMF and I get a letter from students that would make you cry. That they have no electricity or water. That they have not been able to eat for days. That they are crying out for help. That they are thousands of miles away from home. Imagine you got a child in the States far less across the road in India. Imagine how you would feel. Knowing that you sell land, you sell everything you had in some instances. That the people tell you pay 2 and 3 years up front to get a better price. You pay 30 and 40,000 US, not true, Minister Moore? How much? Some as much as 75,000 US. That you never heard about this place called Barbados. In fact, if you go on YouTube, you will hear one of them talking about Barbados. And they got a different way to pronounce Guyana too. So much so that they not know, some of them, about this part of the world. But they obviously felt that it was a legitimate thing because you had a minister of education you had a minister of education for a number of these universities prepared to say to whoever it may concern, 18th of November 2016, the Washington University of Barbados has been granted a license to operate a medical school brackets college in Barbados. The college is listed with the World Directory of Medical Schools. I don't know what that means or why. The university is having recognized qualifications for enrollment as medical practitioners in Barbados from the year 2016 onwards. Now let's pause. Let's pause. Because, and this same document got 2 stamps, 2 $5 stamps. The document, Ralph, is written to whom it may concern. The letterhead is who? The Honorable Ronald Jones, JP, MP, Minister of Education, Science, Technology, and Innovation. And then this is known as what, Ralph? A seal. So that when you see a document signed by a big minister on his letterhead with a seal and with 2 $5 stamps, you all feel it's a laughing matter, but it's not a laughing matter. This isn't a laughing matter at all. You must believe, although the first thing that should have alerted you is that ministers don't send a document with a seal and stamps to whom it may concern. That's the first thing that should have alerted you. Not true, Ralph? Then secondly, a person who is unsuspecting would feel that this is a real thing, have the ability to issue qualifications for you to be enrolled as a medical practitioner in Barbados. Now, I'm not going to get into all of the details tonight, but suffice it to say that he knew then, in my view, that the cabinet of Barbados had told him when he carried first and foremost for this school to go to the cabinet, as he subsequently did for Victoria University, that we are only to see a sign on an IDC building in the harbor for, and Bridgetown International University, that the first time I heard about was when I saw a YouTube video with him as the Vice Chancellor of Bridgetown International University. Cease and settle. He knew that in each of those instances too, when he went to the cabinet, that at least on the face of it, the cabinet said, go and make sure that they are registered and that they are accredited. And that the charter says that within 2 years that you have to operate these things, and then once you have registration and accreditation, you can continue. Now, you got a child. The first thing you want to do is to know where you're spending your money at for the child to get the degree. Not true? You ain't sending it to a shop. And even a shop, you're going to want to know whether the shop got the goods to sell that you're sending the child to buy it from. You're not too sure about this place called Barbados. You hear about Gary Sobers, you hear about Rihanna. But then you see a big seal and stamps and minister. And then you add to that and you go on YouTube. And you go on YouTube. No, I can find YouTube. You don't worry about that. You don't worry about that at all. And you put in Washington University of Barbados. And the third video you see in there is Ronald Jones dressed like an Indian. With a blue suit. And don't get me wrong, I wear a lot of kurtas. Not true? I wear a lot of Indian clothes. I lived with Indians when I went to university. And there are others. And you see the big Washington University of Barbados. Now, since when a minister of government becomes the primary sales agent and marketer for an entity, can you see me or any of these ministers or MPs walking about doing a video for Ross University or American University of Barbados telling you to send your children there? But you would want to know what kind of puppet am I? Have I lost leave of my senses? And to make it worse, even if I was going to endorse something, I would want to know that they can do what the city could do. I am am not getting into the details of the transactions because that is for whoever investigating it. I am getting into the reputation of the cabinet of Barbados and the government of Barbados. Because I happen to lead a cabinet. And I know they're mad as to play that they are sending off documents with a seal and an apostille. Look at them here. And it wasn't only to Washington University of Barbados. On the 1st of December 2017. He did another one for the same Bridgetown, I believe. And then he did other letters in January and March. And there are letters when he felt that he did something wrong, he wrote letters of withdrawal. So he knew when he had written a letter with a signature in error, sent to you in error, and he withdraw the letters. And I'm saying to you, how does this happen? But if you felt it was limited to Ronald Jones alone, then you have to ask the minister there too. How is it that the officials in education and health feel that they were not part of this process? You remember what I said at the beginning with Ross? I set up a what? A subcommittee of cabinet. I didn't even know about any of these things then. But I would not know how to treat to any business. Many of you may have seen that we had a session at Sherborne, Lloyd Erskine Sandyford Center with the ministers of government and the PSs. And in that I said, ministers must not attend meetings without public officials. You remember that? Because it is the public officials who keep the record and who execute. We set policy. We don't spend money. In addition to that, you have to protect yourself against foolish people making allegations. There was a man walking about this week pretending to be in Darware and calling up people, begging for money, saying that I, as Prime Minister, sent him ask for money for a young. That is the kind of madness. Instagram accounts, Facebook accounts, you see people putting up fake accounts all the time from us. And that's why I had to go to Instagram and get mine verified. So you see a blue tick next to my name. So you know that that is the real thing. The real McCoy on Instagram, not the fake ones. So in this world, you know that people are going to try scams. But a minister of government can't locate themselves in the middle of it. And you do that by not carrying along your public officials, the permanent secretary, and the chief technical officers, who can then go through things in accordance with the appropriate criteria that we have set out to make sure that not only are the children or the students not harmed, but the reputation of Barbados is not harmed. I just told you what potentially Ross University means to us economically. You must know that reputation matters. And what then hurts me more is that when we call a meeting, because as you would have seen, and I want to thank Minister Moe, Minister Ford, Minister Bostic, Minister Hinkson, all of whom have been working beyond the call of duty this week to get to the bottom of the facts. But when I had the meeting on Friday, and the chief immigration officer sat no further from me than you are, my dear, right across from me, and said to me, Prime Minister, that is why that the gentleman not be granted a work permit or be allowed to enter the country. Because our due diligence had shown that there were questionable circumstances related to fraud and honesty. And I said, but excuse me? Repeat yourself. And when it was repeated, I said, but how then are we here? How did we get here? Only then to learn that a minister approved a short-term work permit on the 7th of March of this year. I said a minister. I didn't tell you which minister. All will come out in time. All will come out in time. Suffice it to say that the reports also indicated that 2 previous cabinet ministers of the last government were found trying to talk to the students in the last month. One as a lawyer and one as I don't know what. I mean that I don't know in what capacity. But I find it absolutely strange. Now, are not good. These things are not good. And when I say to you that it hurts me that we had to do a debt restructuring, trust me, it hurts me. Because these are all of the things that are coming out little by little by little by little that have shown me why and how we cannot find where the debt went. With respect to this, we have a duty now to ensure that first and foremost that human beings can live and eat. It's a humanitarian responsibility. We are working to see which schools that are in fact accredited here, because there are schools that are accredited and registered. And we'll go back home because the truth is they are distressed and distraught. Secondly, we are also working to ensure, therefore, that we can speak to their governments, because our responsibility first, just as if something happened to you overseas, people's responsibility, the first thing they would do is get on to the Barbados government for you. Okay? All jokes aside. And these things have to be done because these are somebody's children. These are and in many instances, the others will tell you, Minister Moore and Ford will tell you, that they're young, they're 18, they're 19, they're young, and 20, some of them impressionable. And they come from all over the world, and they happen to be here. And Barbadians know how to take care of people, and we shall take care of them properly. I have asked Minister Ford to have her department do a full social survey, because you cannot make decisions en masse, one by one, just as we are seeking to do with those pensioners who are disadvantaged by the debt exchange. Because that's the only way. Many hands make light work. One by one, by one, by one, by one, by one, we will assess, even if it takes us the next few weeks to do it, working 20-hour days. We are also going to make sure that draft legislation comes, because Barbados must never have the indignity again of having a minister of government act in a way that would cause students to believe that children are entitled to receive some degree yet been set up to receive. The truth is that I don't know who or what they were licensed for in this letter that he was referring to. But that through things, and who was not lulled in by the seal and the stamp and the $2 $5 stamps. The university is recognized, having recognized qualifications. That's a serious statement. Because you don't become a doctor in 6 months or 3 months. You pay money for 5 years. And we've told you the kind of money that they were paying. And these people come from where this was their hope and dream for this one child, to lift the rest of the family out of poverty. We can relate to that in Barbados. And if it happened to any one of us, you would be screaming from on top the mountains, saying, this is wrong, it should not happen. And we would too. But we would never have expected to find somebody from the last government telling us as parents that this was a school worth sending your child. And clearly, it was going from 2016, but the last few was 2017 and 2018. So that the Bridgetown International University that we now know that he is a vice chancellor of, I sent them looking for this. They search every dance hall. They search every Kingdom Hall. They search Bank Hall. Got that near Bridgetown. They search. No, when they come in Bushon, I tell him don't bother to come because he would never be there. But they search everywhere. And all that we can find is a sign in an IDC building outside of an IDC. But we found this evening, lo and behold, as I was in the car waiting to come in here, Minister Moore said she met the principal this afternoon. And he said, when she told him that she was bringing the public officials to visit the university on Tuesday, he told her, I am going on a plane to Guyana now. If it was not so serious and tragic, it would be funny. Because they have similar letters, Victoria and Bridgetown. That stamp on the Bridgetown International University, regrettably, is not the two $5 ones now. On Victoria University, it's the $10 stamp. That one was written on the 1st of December 2017. This is unacceptable. The Attorney General will make a statement at a soon time. At a soon time. Because we have a reputation that is going to allow me to preside over a government that can earn money and to see growth in this country. There is a credible university, University of the West Indies, has now been adjudged as one of the top universities in the world, among the top 5%. And we're proud of that. Barbados has been associated with education for most of our existence as a modern state. Even when there was slavery in this country, Codrington College was offering university education to people because it was offering degrees granted by the University of Durham in the United Kingdom. Bajans have always wanted to associate with education. We have equally American University registered and accredited, Minister Moore. And that is the one by BET there in Wildy. That is registered and accredited. That came under them too, but it came the right way, doing the right thing, and had lawyers acting on their behalf in the right manner. Ross University is coming, and we have made sure, and they have been in the Caribbean for over 40 years taking children. This is serious business. And you know, the truth is that you will never know who is who. You understand? I met the gentleman before elections, just as I met the other ones, because you meet all kinds of people coming to Barbados. And what was going on was a pit bull fight between them and the American University of Barbados on it. But what we must be clear of, because when you go to meet people, you don't know who is who when you first meet them. But you do the due diligence. That's what the chief immigration officer was there for. And from the time he raised that flag, what should you have done? Pause. Pause. Investigate. Even give the person the opportunity to show why, because we believe in natural justice. But what we can't have is a situation where we are playing fast and loose of a country. And then secondly, fast and loose as we are now learning, worse than that, with human beings who have now been left to strand. They're workers who have not been paid. I understand that. But they won't be the first person that didn't pay workers. It's bad, shouldn't happen, but it won't be the first, won't be the last. But when you have children, barely now come adults, away, no money to eat, no water, no light. And I'm told that was mainly the men, correct? The dormitory block. They now have water, but that's because we have intervened. I tell the Attorney General to speak to the facts another day. You understand? Trust me. Huh? No, I ain't talking about that. The Attorney General will speak to the facts. I'm not getting into the facts of the other things. They had a separate connection for their own water and light. So I am saying to you that these things affect our ability to do business with credibility. And at a time when our country is fighting hard to come back up, to climb back up, we cannot be tolerating this. It has come, is regrettable. There are people who will always run things. I just told you about what they were trying to do with Indar last week. It should come from someone having the oath of office as a minister of cabinet, and others in there taking actions that would cause me to wonder, how could you reject evidence presented to you by public officials in this country? Is something that gives me great cause and worry. And I say to the people of Barbados, I will always be intent on defending the honor, reputation, and integrity of this country. But more so, I will always share information with you, because you must understand the road that we have been forced to walk. Last Thursday, the others would tell you that I was miserable for the first few hours at cabinet. Miserable. And you know what came up? I read a file that caused me to wonder what kind of people constituted the last government. There was a problem with the Coast Guard station. When we had a weather incident in March 2008, it was the Coast Guard station had a defect, and that it moved, I don't know which way to put it, it moved a few inches, which meant that there was either a design defect or a construction defect. A problem. If you have a problem, what do you do with something when you spend tens of millions of dollars? Not only fix it, but hold who responsible for it. When you read the file then, only to find out that in spite of a first warning by the Solicitor General, nothing has been done. And that what requires to be done now, on an outdated quotation of a few years ago, the finance now $23 million. the equivalent almost of what it costs us. That runs is that nobody took any action to preserve the claim of the government of Barbados. Your member of parliament would tell you that all to do, even if they were in doubt, was to issue the writ and preserve the action, just to make sure that it would not become statute barred. You know, people tell you that the statute of limitations gone, that you can't sue no more. And I ask myself, who came to work to defend the interests of Barbados? Who came to work to defend the interests of the government of Barbados? And this is what week by week by week. And if it wasn't so late, I could stand up in here and give you more examples. Week by week by week by week. Law cases, lawsuits that we lose. Nobody appeals. Letters going to the Attorney General. All of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, a gentleman from Trinidad is writing us telling us, by the way, you all lost this, no appeal was done. We said this, last government did nothing. Our loss of profits is $14.2 million US dollars. Week by week by week by week. And they have the gall to walk about this country like if they are heroes or save somebody. A time is coming when I'm going to have a conversation with you all in Hero Square. Because they need to be unmasked. I am not saying that everybody will get 100% right, Leo. Barbadians are forgiven. But what you cannot do is to literally throw the whole country out. The whole country. Simply because you were not prepared to defend the interests of the people of this country. And when we told you that there was corruption in high places, what did they do? Starboard week by week by week. I was called every possible name under the sun. I suffered the indignity week after week. It didn't matter because I knew it was true. You saw evidence of it, yeah. But it didn't done there, and it ain't done there. In good time, speak to you. And I say to you, and I will always share with you, even when I have some level of ambivalence. Because I keep telling you, and I've said to you not once, not that I am not an Old Testament girl. That I'm a New Testament person. But I also recognize that at some point, this young man must know that right is right and wrong. But I also have a responsibility to make sure that this country does not become consumed in anger or revenge or wrath. Because the last time I checked, none of the three of them put food on your table. I am happy that, as I said publicly already, that the Attorney General and I have been in discussions. The Archbishop of the Roman Catholic Church wrote me a letter that I've reflected on, and I believe in these things. You put it down, you reflect, and you come back. And I believe we are ready now to move forward to set up a 3-man committee that is prepared to listen. As I went on, I want to talk about it. I need to be able to see, because if nothing else, I need to move forward. And how we structure that statute, not by conversation, or we will share with the country, because too far west is east, too far east is west. And the bottom line is that we cannot, while we must hold a line with the clear intransigencies, we cannot be going, we forget that our primary duty is to keep a safe, prosperous, and fair Barbados for each and every one. And that you have given us 5 years at the most to do it in. We have started in the way that we feel we know best. We have of the mission critical promises. We are stabilizing the country. We are getting the international support that we need, because remember, I told you, you cannot get out of a 50-foot hole without help. But at the same time, we are doing the things inside. And when you start to do some of those things, it will be a little painful. Yes, it will be. But when I start to exercise again after the elections for the first time, it was a little painful. But I kept doing it because I know that it is from a betterment. When you are going and you have an operation, the first thing people is tell the gas, the gas, the gas. Not true? Yes. But the gas, and you then do what? The soreness goes. And then you start to walk a little more. And then after the first set of walking, you can start to get into rehabilitation. And next thing you know, you're back to normal and you're path to things in life if you want to fix it. I saw a thing going wrong with me that I had to laugh hard. With the Buckley's box, it is bitter, but it works. It works. We work, and we shall succeed. Good night, and God bless.
Madam Prime Minister, during the course of the election, and here would have helped. We had a campaign committee. It was headed by Adrian Donovan, and we were very fortunate to have our candidate be seated in the House Assembly to assist in the work of your government. I now call Adrian Donovan to hand the picture over to you. It has signatures on it from all the campaign team, and we want you to hand that picture over to our representative for Christchurch South, Mr. Ralph Don.
Madam Prime Minister, you look very anxious to receive what is in my hand. And the whole papas harassing me. The guy's a Ronald Jones. Oh, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, the members of the Christchurch South Campaign Committee, branch members, volunteers, that ended on a successful note on May the 24th. Commissioned a young lady in the constituency, by the name of Community College. And we asked her, with no unbiased, to please compose a portrait, name your price, of the most in Miss Mottley's parliament. No bias. We then commissioned her to get all the signatories who work with the Honorable Ralph Thorne. And before you go tonight, I want you all to know, Madam Prime Minister, I have never known a candidate in the history of politics who ran such a clean campaign and never once mentioned the name of his opponent at any one time. Had to be a record. And in fact, ma'am, the next couple of days of his victory, the defeated opponent called the winning candidate and congratulated him on running a clean campaign. The campaign was so clean. There was so much love in the campaign. People love to get engaged. People to follow one another. They follow one another. When they had meetings, people fell out there, talk. They call one another names. Oh, Lord, but the campaign was full of love. The young people in this campaign, you know, we had a lot of old people there that ran this show. I'm married man. But ladies and gentlemen, this lovely portrait here of the most handsome MP in Miss Mottley's family. Adrian, I want to take it personal. I'm now going to ask the Prime Minister to come and present this to the MP who intends to serve with us for donkey years to come.
Thank you, Adrian. I note that you said that you commissioned her to do a portrait of the most handsome MP. You didn't say the most beautiful, so I knew all the women were saved. I would only say, Ralph, on behalf of your team, this represents love and affection. And I really think that you should feel very proud that they not only have done it, but that the young lady herself is clearly a very talented, because this is not a photograph, this is a painting. Congratulations. And I can tell you, it is not an easy thing to paint faces. But I have a separate bit of pride, because you said she's from community college?
Yes.
And many years ago, as Minister of Education, I started the associate degree and the degree in bachelor degree in fine arts and performing arts. And hence, this is the kind of talent that inspired me to start that.
All of this is designed to see me cry for the first time. Prime Minister Young Sequoia came to the attention of this campaign when we did a community fair. And we have an author in this constituency, Prime Minister, Henderson Seeley. He came to our attention, displayed the talents of the people who live in this constituency. Status, a young artist as well. And Henderson has written a children's book, Alex, Miss Benjamin Donkey. I hope I can speak to in fact, the Minister of Education is here, and we have a member of this constituency, your constituency, who Benjamin had a donkey. And my son has read it and he's enjoyed it. And I want to appeal to you on behalf of Henderson Seeley in this constituency to see that that book gets into our primary schools and our early secondary participants. But Sequoia, I met Sequoia. I hope she doesn't mind me saying that Sequoia's mum died when she was very young. I think in her teens. She is a young student of Harrison College, and she is now at the Barbados Community College. And I told Sequoia, look, we're doing a community fair, and we want to display the talents of the young people in our constituency. And she came there, and she displayed her art. She's an art student at community college. Out of that, I bought this that she had done. And her name is Sequoia Holligan. She lives across there opposite the Pegwell Church. And anyone who is interested in art and good art, she must be good because she has me looking. She did a little more for me than I have done for myself. So I want to commend the work of Sequoia to you. Again, Adrian, I suspect you're the culprit behind this. I thank you so much. Much love to you, brother. I had called the names of all the people in the campaign, and I don't want to call anymore, but just allow me one more, Prime Minister. That lady behind there who's always telling me she loves me. Marcita Walcott, please stand. Prime Minister, Marcita is actually mentioned in a book, a national text that honors community workers in this country. You know Marcita Walcott, an excellent human being. It is Marcita who nurtured Canon Jones into his 101st year. He recently died. It was Marcita who used to look after him every day. We have some outstanding people. We're so happy to see you, and we want to show off to you this evening. Not only this, but you have visited a branch that loves you. You have visited a branch that you clearly love, and we want you back here as often as possible. Please come back as often as possible. Let me seize the opportunity to say to everyone who has come here tonight, when the PM came, she asked me, people in there? You know, politicians like to ask. I say, yes, we have a good crowd. You've been a crowd. And you have demonstrated absolute confidence. You've demonstrated absolute confidence in your great party, this party that Grantley Adams founded. This party that the spirit of Grantley Adams will continue to live. And the spirit of Grantley Adams will continue to live in the heart and soul of this first female Prime Minister of Barbados. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for coming. Adrian, I want to thank you personally as well. Minister Mo, I want to thank you so much. You joined, she came to our campaign at the height of the campaign, and she said, look, I want you to win. She offered to campaign for us in her own neighborhood. I said, but Lucille, I want to come down there and see the people. She said, don't worry. I have them. I am here to see that you win this election. And she came, she did a seminar at the branch office one night. Lucy, we love you, and we want to say how much we appreciate all that you have done for us in succeeding in this 1/30th of a general election. Thank you so much. So I will say thanks to Sequoia. I have managed to do this without shedding the tear that you want to see, but when I get home in the privacy of my house, I will go to a room and cry. Thank you, Sequoia. I don't think you're here, but we love you very much for what you've done for our campaign. She actually worked for us during the election day, and I want to personally say to Sequoia, thanks very much, and to continue the good work that you've been doing, and we will market Sequoia's work. We will use the branch office, Prime Minister. We've promised people in the constituency. A lot of people in Barbados don't know that the taxpayers' dollars pay for the constituency offices. And that being the case, let the taxpayers and the other people come and do their work there. So Sequoia, it is open to her to come and use our constituency office. Her work can be displayed, and where a person even have the extra money can come and purchase her work. To all of you again, thanks very much. I will pass back over to the new president of the constituency of Christchurch South. Thank you very much.
I thank you all. The evening was a long one, a good one. We thank you for coming. We certainly thank all the delegates for coming. And the meeting has now come to a close. Thank you. Sorry, the vote of thanks. Yeah. We call the youngest member of our branch.